Today, we're going to talk about addiction and your brain. Let's start by looking at your brain, and the parts we will be discussing are mostly deep inside and can't be seen from the outside. Let's start with the amygdala. This small area lies deep in the brain and is part of the limbic system. It's responsible for keeping people alive from immediate threats. It is linked to sense memory of an event, like smell or sight. If there was a threat at a certain location, like crocodiles by the river, the brain would remember that. If there was food found in a specific area, that too would be remembered. This region is responsible for very automatic responses, and it is triggered without conscious effort. Then we have the basal ganglia. This part of the brain can be thought of as the pleasure center. It lights up with feel-good chemicals when we encounter sugar, fat, sex, or even drugs and alcohol. It is this area of the brain that kept early man alive by reinforcing pleasurable experiences to make survival easier. Again, like finding food, the basal ganglia would signal to the amygdala to lock in the memory to know this is important for survival. Drugs and alcohol are not necessary for survival, often the opposite, but they feel good, so the amygdala locks in that memory. I also want to tell you about the prefrontal cortex. This big area is your stop system. It controls reasoning, logic, impulse control, and it is not fully formed until age 25. You really don't see a lot of 28-year-olds doing the Tide Pod challenge. It takes years for this region to develop and come online. This is why teens often have less understanding of their future and can do risky things, because that control is not strong yet. And using drugs before the age of 25 can have a big impact on your prefrontal cortex development, including your risk for a brain injury and mental illness. One last bit of anatomy and science: neurotransmitters. These are chemical messengers that get released from one neuron and then dock at the receptor sites of another neuron. They are powerful and amazing, but when manipulated from outside sources, they can throw the chemistry of your brain out of balance. That can cause downstream negative effects on your ability to think and make decisions. A major neurotransmitter related to drug addiction is dopamine. Dopamine is released by the brain in response to pleasurable activities, ensuring you'll do that activity again, like eating. Drugs and alcohol also influence dopamine to be released into the reward center of the brain, which motivates people to use it again. Anything that is pleasurable can be misused. You can run too much, eat too much, or do risky things chasing adrenaline that can put your life in danger. If you engage in a behavior so much that negatively impacts your ability to function at school or work, it becomes a problem. Drugs hijack your control of your brain and drive you to seek out more of that drug. The temporary and artificial pleasure you can experience from using drugs is many times more intense than a natural high, like grunting or eating, and it is quite dangerous. However, once the brain becomes dependent on a drug, you may start to seek it out more and more. This in turn can impair your functioning at school, work, or in relationships, making you suffer mentally, emotionally, physically, and socially. We understand that some people will use substances because they are trying to relieve discomfort, whether it's anxiety, depression, or a history of trauma. The possibility of becoming addicted is higher for those who feel a negative burden is lifted when taking a substance. This doesn't address the real reasons behind those negative feelings, and it will further intensify these feelings when off the substance. Because the amygdala sits next to the brain structure, the hippocampus that forms new memories, people remember specific things connected to their use of drugs. These memories can become triggers for future drug use, like being in the setting when a drug was used or seeing the people you used a drug with. It could be a friend who you used it with, or walking by a store where you bought alcohol, or even a song on the radio that was playing when you were high. Any sensory trigger can light up a craving. This is why we now understand that cravings and relapses can't be equated to a lack of willpower. It is literally something happening automatically in your brain. The best recourse is not to give into the cravings, it's to speak with someone who can help and avoid triggers whenever possible. So, in summary, this is your brain. It's amazing. Some of it is automatic. Parts of it gives you access to reasoning and logic. And if you're a teen, it's still developing. So remember, be kind to your mind.